B. The rookie's frustration. Lieutenant Jake Morrison had been stationed at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan for 8 months, and every single day felt like a test he kept failing. The 25-year-old A-10 Thunderbolt pilot had graduated top of his class from flight training. But here in the real world, experience trumped academic excellence every time. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty airfield as Jake walked toward the briefing room, his flight suit still crisp despite the oppressive heat. Around him, veteran pilots moved with the casual confidence that came from hundreds of combat sorties. They joked easily with ground crew, their conversations peppered with references to missions Jake had only heard about secondhand. Squadron Commander Colonel Sarah Mitchell was already at the podium when Jake slipped into the back row. Her weathered face bore the marks of 15 years flying close air support missions, and her reputation for keeping troops alive was legendary throughout the theater. Intelligence indicates increased Taliban activity in the Kunar province, Colonel Mitchell began, pointing to a map displaying rugged mountain terrain. We have multiple units operating in the area, including a SEAL reconnaissance team that inserted last night. Jake leaned forward, studying the terrain. The mountains looked brutal, with steep valleys that could hide entire enemy formations. His hands unconsciously gripped his knee pads as he imagined threading an A-10 through those narrow passages. "Morrison," Colonel Mitchell's voice cut through his thoughts, "you'll be flying Cap over the northern sector. Stay high, stay alert, and maintain radio contact with Overlord." Jake's heart sank. Combat air patrol meant flying circles at high altitude, essentially serving as an airborne radio relay. Again. While other pilots got tasked with close air support missions that actually mattered, he was relegated to the aviation equivalent of standing guard. After the briefing, Jake approached the commander. "Ma'am, with respect, I've been flying Cappy for 6 weeks straight. I'm ready for something more challenging." Colonel Mitchell studied him with steel-gray eyes that had seen too many young pilots eager to prove themselves. "Morrison, you're a good pilot, but you're still learning. Cap duty keeps you safe while you build experience." "But ma'am, how am I supposed to build experience if I never get the chance to use my training?" "Trust the process, Lieutenant. Your time will come." As Jake walked to his aircraft, frustration burned in his chest. His A-10, tail number 78 near 0671, sat waiting on the flight line. The twin-engine attack aircraft looked like it had been designed by someone who prioritized function over beauty. With its massive 30mm cannon protruding from the nose and thick titanium armor protecting the cockpit, the Warthog was built for one purpose: keeping ground troops alive. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, his crew chief, was conducting the pre-flight inspection. She looked up as Jake approached, noting his expression. "Rough briefing, sir?" "Another Cap mission," Jake muttered, beginning his own walk-around inspection. "Look at it this way, Lieutenant. Every hour in the air makes you better. And up there," she gestured toward the mountains, "better might mean the difference between coming home and not." Jake nodded, appreciating her perspective, even as disappointment gnawed at him. He climbed into the cockpit and began running through his pre-flight checklist. The familiar routine of switch positions and system checks helped calm his mind. 20 minutes later, Jake was airborne, climbing toward his assigned altitude of 20,000 feet. Below him, the Afghan landscape stretched out in browns and grays, dotted with small villages that looked peaceful from this height. He knew better. Intelligence reports painted a different picture of a region where danger lurked in every shadow. "Overlord, this is Hog 7-1, checking in on station," Jake radioed. "Hog 7-1, Overlord, copy you on station. Current weather is clear, visibility unlimited. Maintain current altitude and heading." For the next 2 hours, Jake flew his assigned pattern. Occasionally, radio chatter would crackle through his headset, reports from ground units moving through the mountains below. He found himself studying the terrain, mentally cataloging potential threats and escape routes the way his instructors had taught him. At 11:47 hours, everything changed. Any station, this is Neptune 7. The voice that burst through Jake's radio was tight with controlled panic. We are in contact, taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate close air support. Jake's pulse spiked. Neptune 7 was the call sign for the SEAL team that had inserted the night before. He immediately turned toward the coordinates being transmitted, but Overlord's voice stopped him cold. Hog 7-1. Maintain current position. Neptune 7, be advised. Viper flight is en route your location. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Jake looked at his navigation display and calculated the distance. The SEAL team was 8 miles away and he could be overhead in less than 3 minutes, but his orders were clear. Maintain position. Neptune 7 is taking casualties. The SEAL radio operator's voice was strained. We need support now. Jake's hands tightened on the flight controls. Every instinct screamed at him to break formation and assist, but military discipline held him back. He forced himself to maintain his assigned patrol route while listening to the desperate radio calls below. Overlord, this is Hog 7-1. I can be on station over Neptune 7 in 2 minutes. Request permission to provide immediate support. Negative, Hog 7-1. Maintain current position. Viper flight has the target. Jake wanted to scream. Viper flight was a pair of F-16s flying from Kandahar, fast movers that could deliver precision strikes but lacked the A-10's ability to provide sustained close air support. In the mountains, where enemies could be dangerously close to friendly forces, the Warthog's precision and loiter time were exactly what the situation demanded. Neptune 7, heavy contact from the North Ridge Line. The panic in the SEAL operator's voice was growing. We're pinned down and running low on ammunition. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He rolled his A-10 into a steep diving turn toward the battle, pushing his throttles forward. The twin turbofan engines spooled up, and his airspeed rapidly increased. Overlord, Hog 7-1 is proceeding to assist Neptune 7. Hog 7-1, you are ordered to return to your assigned position immediately. Jake switched his radio to the SEAL frequency. Neptune 7, this is Hog 7-1 inbound your position. Mark your location with smoke. Hog 7-1, Neptune 7. Thank God, marking our position with purple smoke. Enemy positions are on the ridgeline to our north, approximately 200 meters from our location. As Jake descended through 15,000 feet, he could see the purple smoke rising from a narrow valley. His tactical display showed him exactly where he was in relation to friendly and enemy positions. This was what he had trained for, what every hour in the simulator had been preparing him for. But as he lined up for his first attack run, Colonel Mitchell's words echoed in his mind. Trust the process, Lieutenant. Had he just thrown away his career to prove a point? Or was he about to save lives that would otherwise be lost? The only way to find out was to complete the mission he had given himself. Into the fire. Jake descended rapidly toward the firefight, his A-10's heads-up display painting a clear picture of the tactical situation below. The SEAL team's purple smoke marker stood out against the rocky terrain, while muzzle flashes from the northern ridgeline revealed enemy positions scattered across a 300-meter front. Neptune 7, Hog 7-1 has you in sight, Jake transmitted, banking his aircraft to get a better view of the battlefield. I count at least 15 enemy positions along the ridgeline. How many personnel do you have on the ground? Hog 7-1, we have 8 personnel, all accounted for. We're taking fire from PKM machine guns and small arms. They have us completely pinned down in this ravine. Jake could see the problem immediately. The SEAL team had been caught in a classic ambush, trapped in low ground while enemy fighters held commanding positions above them. The terrain made it nearly impossible for the Special Operations team to maneuver, and their only cover was a cluster of large boulders that wouldn't protect them for long. Roger, Neptune 7. I'm going to make a gun run on the eastern end of that ridgeline to give you some breathing room. When I'm off target, move to better cover. Jake rolled into his attack approach, lining up on a cluster of muzzle flashes approximately 250 meters from the SEAL position. His targeting computer locked onto the coordinates, and he began his dive toward the target. At 8,000 feet, he squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon erupted to life, its distinctive sound like the roar of an angry giant. Depleted uranium rounds streaked toward the ridgeline at 3,900 rounds per minute, each projectile capable of penetrating armored vehicles. Against infantry positions, the effect was devastating. Dust and rock exploded along the eastern section of the ridgeline as Jake's cannon fire walked across enemy positions. He could see fighters scrambling for new cover as their carefully prepared ambush positions disintegrated under the withering fire. "Good hits! Good hits!" came the excited voice from Neptune 7. "Eastern positions are neutralized. We're moving to better cover now." But Jake's radio also crackled with less welcome news. "Hog 7-1, this is Overlord. You are ordered to cease fire and return to base immediately. Viper Flight is taking over the mission." Jake glanced at his fuel gauge. He had enough for maybe 20 more minutes on station, but Viper Flight was still 8 minutes out. In mountain warfare, 8 minutes might as well be 8 hours. "Overlord, Neptune 7 is still taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Viper Flight doesn't have eyes on target yet. Request permission to continue support until they arrive." Permission denied. RTB immediately or face disciplinary action. Jake knew he was already facing serious consequences for disobeying orders, but the radio chatter from the SEAL team made his decision easy. "Taking heavy fire from the western positions now," Neptune 7 reported. "They're trying to flank us from the south. We need immediate suppression on grid coordinates." The coordinates put enemy fighters dangerously close to the SEAL position, well within the danger-close range that required extreme precision. Jake had trained for this exact scenario countless times, but this was his first opportunity to execute it in actual combat. He banked hard left and lined up for another gun run, this time targeting the western positions. The range was tighter, requiring him to fly lower and slower to ensure accuracy. As he descended through 6,000 feet, tracer rounds began streaking past his cockpit. The enemy fighters had anti-aircraft weapons. "Neptune 7. Be advised I'm taking AOA fire. This might get interesting." Jake pressed his attack despite the ground fire, knowing that hesitation could mean death for the trapped SEALs below. His cannon roared again, stitching a line of destruction across the western ridgeline. Secondary explosions indicated he had hit an ammunition cache, and the volume of return fire decreased noticeably. "Outstanding work, Hog 7-1, Neptune 7 called out. "Western positions are suppressed. We've got 2 wounded, but we can move now." Jake pulled up from his attack run and immediately rolled into another approach. His threat warning system was screaming as more anti-aircraft fire reached toward him, but he focused on the tactical situation below. The enemy was adapting, moving to positions that would give them clear fields of fire on the SEAL team's new location. "Neptune 7, you have enemy movement along the southern approach to your position. They're trying to cut off your escape route." "Copy that. Can you put some hate on those positions?" Jake was already lining up his shot. This attack run would take him directly over the heaviest concentration of anti-aircraft fire, but it was the only angle that would allow him to engage the flanking enemy force without risking the SEAL team. He pushed his throttles forward and dove toward the target, ignoring the increasing intensity of tracer fire around his aircraft. A sharp bang echoed through the cockpit as something struck his left engine, but his instruments showed it was still running normally. The cannon spoke again, and Jake watched his rounds impact among the enemy fighters moving to flank the SEALs. Bodies scattered as the depleted uranium rounds found their marks, effectively stopping the flanking maneuver. "Hog 7-1, this is Viper Lead inbound your position," a new voice announced over the radio. "We have the target area in sight." Jake looked up and spotted two F-16s approaching from the south, their sleek forms cutting through the thin mountain air. Relief flooded through him as he realized the cavalry had finally arrived. Viper lead, this is Hog 7-1. Neptune 7 is located in the ravine marked by purple smoke. Enemy positions are scattered along the northern ridgeline, with heavy weapons concentrated on the western end. I've been engaging for the past 12 minutes. Copy that, Hog 7-1. We'll take it from here. Good work. Jake began climbing away from the target area, but his relief was short-lived. His left engine warning light suddenly illuminated, and he could see dark smoke trailing from the exhaust. The anti-aircraft fire had done more damage than he initially thought. Overlord, Hog 7-1 declaring an emergency. Left engine damage returning to base. As Jake limped his damaged A-10 toward Bagram, he listened to Viper Flight coordinate with the SEAL team. The F-16s were dropping precision-guided bombs on the remaining enemy positions, systematically dismantling what was left of the ambush force. Neptune 7, this is Overlord. Extraction helicopter is inbound your position. ETA 15 minutes. Jake smiled despite his predicament. The SEAL team would make it out alive, even if his own career was probably over. He had violated direct orders, engaged without authorization, and put his aircraft at unnecessary risk. Military discipline existed for good reasons, and he had chosen to ignore it. But as he lined up for approach to Bagram Air Base, flying on one engine with warning lights illuminating his cockpit, Jake felt no regret. Sometimes the right choice and the smart choice weren't the same thing. His radio crackled one last time. Hog 7-1, this is Neptune 7. Thanks for the save, pilot. You kept us alive when it counted. Jake keyed his mic for a final transmission. Just doing my job, Neptune 7. Glad you're all going home. Now he just had to figure out if he would be going home in handcuffs. The Reckoning. Jake's damaged A-10 touched down at Bagram Air Base with smoke still trailing from the left engine. Fire trucks raced alongside his aircraft as he taxied to the maintenance area, where Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and her crew were waiting with obvious concern on their faces. As Jake shut down the engines and began his post-flight checklist, he could see Colonel Mitchell's staff car racing across the tarmac toward his parking spot. His stomach tightened as he realized the inevitable confrontation was only minutes away. "How bad is it, Sergeant?" Jake asked Rodriguez as she climbed up to inspect the engine damage. She whistled low as she examined the engine bay. "You've got shrapnel damage to the turbine housing and what looks like a fuel line that's been partially severed. Sir, you're lucky this thing didn't catch fire or lose power completely." Jake nodded grimly. The A-10 was famous for its ability to absorb damage and keep flying. But even the Warthog had its limits. He had pushed those limits today and barely made it home. Colonel Mitchell approached as Jake climbed down from the cockpit. Her expression was unreadable, but Jake could sense the controlled anger radiating from her. Behind her walked Major General Robert Hayes, the wing commander, whose presence made Jake's situation exponentially worse. "Lieutenant Morrison?" Colonel Mitchell's voice was ice-cold. "Report to my office immediately. General Hayes will be conducting a formal inquiry into your actions today." The walk to the squadron building felt like a death march. Other pilots and ground crew watched with obvious curiosity as Jake was escorted by the wing commander himself. Word traveled fast on military bases, and everyone would know about his unauthorized mission within hours. Colonel Mitchell's office felt smaller, with General Hayes occupying one of the chairs in front of her desk. The general was a veteran of 3 combat deployments, a pilot who had earned his stars through exceptional leadership and tactical brilliance. His presence alone indicated how seriously Jake's breach of discipline was being taken. "Lieutenant Morrison," General Hayes began, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of military service. "You disobeyed direct orders, abandoned your assigned mission, and engaged in combat without authorization. These are serious charges that could result in court-martial and dismissal from the service. Jake stood at attention, staring straight ahead. Yes, sir. I understand the gravity of my actions. Do you? Colonel Mitchell interjected. Do you understand that military discipline exists for reasons beyond your personal comprehension? That orders are given based on intelligence and tactical considerations you may not be aware of? Ma'am, I believed that the SEAL team would suffer casualties if immediate assistance wasn't provided. That was not your decision to make, General Hayes said sharply. Viper flight was en route with appropriate weapons and authorization to engage. Your intervention was unnecessary and potentially dangerous. Jake felt his carefully maintained composure crack slightly. Sir, with respect, Viper flight was 12 minutes out. In 12 minutes, that SEAL team could have been overrun. Lieutenant, Colonel Mitchell's voice rose slightly. You're a rookie pilot with 8 months of deployment experience. What makes you think you're qualified to second-guess tactical decisions made by experienced commanders? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Jake knew there was no good answer, nothing that would justify his actions in military terms. He had acted on instinct and emotion rather than following the chain of command. Before anyone could speak further, Colonel Mitchell's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. I need to take this. Mitchell, she answered curtly. Her expression changed as she listened to whoever was on the other end. Yes, sir. I understand. We'll be right there. She hung up and looked at General Hayes with obvious confusion. Sir, that was Lieutenant Colonel Peterson from Special Operations Command. He's requesting to speak with Lieutenant Morrison immediately. General Hayes raised an eyebrow. SOC wants to talk to Morrison? About what? He didn't say, sir. He just said it was urgent and related to today's mission. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself in a secure conference room with video screens showing personnel at various military installations. Lieutenant Colonel Peterson, the Special Operations Commander, appeared on the main screen, flanked by other officers Jake didn't recognize. Lieutenant Morrison, Peterson began, I want you to know that Neptune 7 submitted a detailed after-action report regarding your support during today's engagement. According to their team leader, your intervention saved at least 3 lives and prevented the loss of the entire 8-man team. Jake felt a surge of validation. But Peterson wasn't finished. However, the team leader also reported that you exposed yourself to unnecessary risk and disobeyed direct orders to provide that support. He specifically requested that I convey both his gratitude and his concern for your disregard of military protocol. General Hayes leaned forward. Colonel Peterson, are you recommending disciplinary action or commendation? Actually, sir, I'm recommending both. The room fell silent. Peterson continued. Lieutenant Morrison's tactical execution was flawless. His target identification, weapon employment, and coordination with ground forces were textbook examples of close air support. But his decision to disobey orders cannot be overlooked, regardless of the positive outcome. Another voice joined the conversation as Admiral Sarah Collins. The Theater Special Operations Commander appeared on a secondary screen. General Hayes, I've reviewed the full mission transcript and spoke personally with the Neptune 7 team leader. While we cannot condone Lieutenant Morrison's breach of protocol, we also cannot ignore the fact that his actions prevented a catastrophic loss of Special Operations personnel. Jake remained at attention, listening to senior officers discuss his fate as if he weren't in the room. The surreal nature of the situation wasn't lost on him, receiving both praise and condemnation for the same actions. Colonel Mitchell spoke up. Admiral, what are you recommending? Letter of reprimand for disobeying orders to remain in his personnel file, but also a commendation for exceptional performance under combat conditions. Lieutenant Morrison needs to understand that good outcomes don't justify poor decision-making, but his courage and skill under fire deserve recognition. General Hayes nodded slowly. That seems appropriate. Lieutenant Morrison, do you understand what's happening here? Yes, sir. I'm being held accountable for my decisions while being recognized for their results. Exactly. You saved lives today, but you also undermined the command structure that keeps our forces coordinated and safe. Both facts matter. Admiral Collins leaned closer to her camera. Lieutenant Morrison, I have one more piece of information for you. Based on your performance today, Special Operations Command is requesting that you be assigned as a dedicated close air support pilot for future high-risk missions. Your squadron commander will receive formal orders within 48 hours. Jake's eyes widened in surprise. The assignment he had been desperately seeking was being handed to him as a result of the very actions that had earned him a reprimand. Colonel Mitchell looked equally surprised. Admiral, with respect, Lieutenant Morrison is still a relatively inexperienced pilot. Colonel, experience isn't just about flight hours, it's about performance under pressure, tactical judgment, and the ability to execute precise attacks in complex environments. Lieutenant Morrison demonstrated all of those qualities today. After the video conference ended, Jake found himself alone with Colonel Mitchell. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. Morrison, you put me in an impossible position today. I have to maintain discipline while acknowledging that you probably made the right tactical decision. Ma'am, I understand the contradiction. Do you? Because I'm not sure I do. She leaned back in her chair. You're going to get your chance to prove yourself on more challenging missions. But if you ever disobey direct orders again, regardless of the outcome, I'll have you court-martialed. Are we clear? Crystal clear, ma'am. As Jake left the colonel's office, he reflected on the day's events. He had gotten everything he wanted: recognition, challenging assignments, and the respect of Special Operations Forces. But he had also learned that success in military aviation required more than just flying skill and courage. Walking across the flight line toward his quarters, Jake spotted Staff Sergeant Rodriguez working on his damaged A-10. She looked up as he approached. How did it go, sir? Complicated, Jake replied. But I'm still here, and I'll still be flying. She smiled. Good, because I've got this bird almost ready to fly again. Turns out, A-10s are tougher than the people who fly them. Jake looked at his aircraft, battle-damaged but repairable, much like his own career. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that sometimes the right choice and the smart choice could be the same thing. He just had to learn when that was true and when it wasn't.